Tonight we stand at a crossroads. The world around us is in turmoil, a place where fear and uncertainty seem to govern every decision, every step we take. Every headline, every conversation seems to echo with the weight of confusion and distress. But tonight, God has a message for us all. Use this weapon. Imagine that. God, the creator of the universe, is giving us a weapon that can change everything, not only for us, but for the world around us. This is no ordinary weapon. This is not a weapon forged in fire or crafted by the hands of man. This is a weapon of divine power, a weapon that cannot be touched by the limitations of the world. It is a weapon of faith, a weapon of hope, a weapon of love, and it is ours for the taking. You may be wondering, how can something as intangible as faith, prayer, or love really be a weapon? After all, we've been conditioned to think of weapons in terms of physical force, violence, or defense, but God's weapons are far beyond anything the world can offer. His weapons don't just change the course of nations, they change hearts. They have the power to reach into the deepest recesses of the human soul and transform it. This weapon of faith is not a passive shield, it's an active force, a shield that repels the fiery darts of doubt, fear, and despair. When we take hold of faith, we take hold of a power that can move mountains, heal brokenness, and overcome the impossible. Faith allows us to see what others cannot see, to hope for what seems unreachable, to trust in what appears uncertain. Faith is the lens through which we view the world as it truly is, full of potential, full of purpose, and full of divine opportunity. But it doesn't end with faith. God says, use this weapon, and that weapon is prayer. Prayer is not a last resort. Prayer is not a ritual or a mere request for things we want. Prayer is the direct line to the creator of the universe, the one who can move heaven and earth. When we pray, we do not just ask for help, we invite God Himself into our circumstances. Do you understand what that means? It means that no battle is fought alone. No trial is faced without divine assistance. When we pray, we become co-laborers with God. Prayer doesn't just change things around us, it changes us. It strengthens our hearts, fortifies our spirits, and aligns our will with His. It is in those quiet moments of prayer that we discover who we are truly meant to be. God's will is revealed, His peace is received, and His strength is unleashed. But there's more. God calls us to wield the most radical, transformative weapon of all, love. Love isn't passive. Love isn't weak. Love is a force so powerful that nothing in this world can stand against it. In a world where hatred, division, and selfishness reign, love is the weapon that will break down walls, heal wounds, and bring people together. It's a love that doesn't just talk about making a difference, but shows up and makes it happen. This love doesn't ignore the pain, it meets it head on. This love doesn't look away from injustice, it stands in its way. This love doesn't retreat when faced with difficulty, it advances, knowing that the greatest power in the universe is the ability to love without limits. I know it's hard to imagine. In a world full of chaos, how can love be the solution? But we are not called to fit in with the world. We are called to be a light to the world, and there is no brighter light than love. Love has the power to conquer fear, to silence the voice of despair, and to heal even the deepest wounds. When we love the unlovable, when we forgive the unforgivable, when we reach out to the hurting with no expectation of return, we wield a power that is This is the weapon God has entrusted to us, and He has called us to use it now, in this very moment, because tonight we stand on the brink of something profound. Tonight, the power of heaven itself is available to us. What would happen if we truly took this weapon and used it? What would happen if we stopped doubting its power? What would happen if we stepped forward in faith, prayed without ceasing, and loved without limits? The answer is simple. Everything would change. Everything you've been facing, every challenge, every obstacle, would begin to shift. No longer would you be defeated by your circumstances. You would rise above them, propelled by the divine strength of God's mighty weapon. Every broken heart, every shattered dream, every fear and insecurity, all of it would be overcome by the power of the weapon God has placed in your hands. But there's one more thing we need to understand. This weapon is not just for our own battles. It's for the battles of those around us. You are not called to hold on to this power for yourself. The weapon of faith, prayer, and love is meant to be shared. When we use this weapon in the lives of others, we become conduits of God's grace, His mercy, and His salvation. Think about the people in your life, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your community. Many of them are suffering, searching, and longing for something more. And you have the weapon that can change everything for them. When you stand in faith, when you pray with power, when you love radically, you are offering them the opportunity to experience the transforming power of God's presence. So let me ask you tonight, will you use the weapon? Will you take what God has given you and use it to change your life, to change the lives of others, and to change the world? The time is now. The moment is here. God has already said it. Use this weapon, and He has given you everything you need to wield it. This is the call of a lifetime, a call to rise up and be more than we ever thought possible. Tonight is the night. So what will you do with it? God has given us a powerful weapon, one that is unlike any weapon we might encounter in the physical realm. In a world that often emphasizes strength, power, and force in terms of material might and control, the weapon God has entrusted to us stands in stark contrast. It is not made of steel, it is not bound by the laws of physics, nor does it rely on force or violence to achieve its purpose. This weapon is spiritual, and it is the divine gifts of faith, prayer, and love. These three elements, faith, prayer, and love, are not just abstract concepts or lofty ideals. They are powerful tools that can transform not only our own lives, but the lives of others around us. They hold the potential to bring hope into the darkest of circumstances, to guide us through the stormiest of trials, and to enable us to overcome challenges that would otherwise seem insurmountable. The weapon God gives us isn't a tool for violence or destruction, but a source of life, healing, and restoration. Faith is the first part of this mighty weapon. When we are armed with faith, we are empowered to see beyond our present reality, beyond the limitations of our circumstances. Faith allows us to tap into the infinite possibilities that God offers. It is the belief that even when we cannot see the way, He is already working behind the scenes. Faith is not about blind optimism or wishful thinking. It is a deep conviction that God's purposes will prevail, no matter the challenges we face. This kind of faith has the power to move mountains, to change hearts, and to break through the seemingly insurmountable walls that life might put before us. The second part of this divine weapon is prayer. Prayer is a direct line to God, a means of communication that transcends time and space. When we pray, we invite God into our lives and our situations, allowing Him to intercede on our behalf. Prayer is not merely a ritualistic act or a recitation of words, but a powerful tool of transformation. Through prayer, we align our hearts with God's will, asking not just for our own desires, but for His guidance, strength, and wisdom. Prayer invites peace into our troubled hearts. It clears our minds, and it strengthens us to face the challenges ahead. It allows us to surrender our burdens and trust in God's sovereignty, knowing that He is bigger than any problem we could ever face. Finally, there is the weapon of love, perhaps the most powerful and transformative of all. Love is the greatest force in the universe because it is at the core of God's nature. God is love, and when we choose to wield love, we align ourselves with His divine purpose. Love is not just a feeling, it is an action, a choice, and a commitment to see the best in others, even when it is difficult. Love reaches out to the broken, the marginalized, and the hurting, offering compassion, forgiveness, and grace. It unites people, heals wounds, and brings reconciliation where division once existed. In a world that is often filled with hatred, anger, and division, love stands as the ultimate force for peace and unity. It is the weapon that disarms hostility, softens hearts, and opens doors to healing. When we wield the weapon of faith, prayer, and love, we are equipped to change not only our own lives, but also the world around us. This weapon has the power to break down barriers, to heal wounds, and to bring about lasting change. And it is available to each and every one of us, regardless of our past, our circumstances, or our limitations. God has given us this weapon because He believes in us and knows the transformative power it holds. In essence, the weapon God has entrusted to us is not one that fights against flesh and blood. Rather, it is one that fights for hope, for healing, for unity, and for the love of God to be made manifest in the world. With this divine weapon in hand, we can face any challenge and walk in victory, knowing that the battle is not ours to fight alone, but God's. The weapon of faith is one of the most powerful tools we have been given. It is not a passive state of mind or a fleeting feeling. It is an active, dynamic force that works within us to shape our perspective, our decisions, and our actions. Faith is not merely about believing in something when everything seems easy or clear. In fact, true faith emerges in the moments of uncertainty, in the seasons of struggle, and during the trials when we are faced with the most daunting challenge. Faith is the shield that protects us from the arrows of doubt, fear, and despair. In a world that often tries to instill fear, uncertainty, and negativity, faith acts as a powerful defense. It guards our hearts and minds, allowing us to stand firm in the face of adversity. When we trust in God, we open ourselves to His divine protection, and we are no longer at the mercy of the world's circumstances. Faith doesn't promise that we won't face hardship, but it guarantees that we will not face it alone. When life seems overwhelming, when the storm clouds of doubt and fear roll in, faith is the anchor that holds us steady. It enables us to see beyond our current circumstances, to look beyond the fog of confusion and uncertainty, and to glimpse the hope that lies on the other side of the storm. Faith helps us see things from a divine perspective, understanding that God is working behind the scenes even when we can't perceive it with our limited understanding. In the Bible, we see countless stories of individuals who exemplified incredible faith in God, even when everything around them seemed to suggest otherwise. From Abraham, who trusted God's promise of a child despite his old age, to Moses, who led the Israelites out of Egypt even though he faced immense opposition. Their faith propelled them forward. These were not people of perfect circumstances, but people who had a deep trust that God's plan would prevail, even when their present realities seem to tell a different story. Faith moves us beyond what we can see, and it propels us toward the unseen promises of God. This active force of faith also gives us the strength to move forward, even when the path ahead seems uncertain or treacherous. Life often presents obstacles that appear insurmountable. Loss, sickness, betrayal, financial struggle, or personal failure. When we face these overwhelming moments, it's easy to feel like giving up, to be consumed by the weight of our challenges, but faith calls us to rise above the feelings of hopelessness and to keep moving forward with the assurance that God is guiding our steps. Faith enables us to take the next step, even when we can't see the entire journey ahead, knowing that God will be there to sustain us each step of the way. Faith is what allows us to trust in God's timing and His plan for our lives, even when the world around us seems uncertain. It assures us that God is in control and that He is working all things together for our good, even if we can't understand it in the moment. This trust in God's ultimate plan frees us from the burden of worry and allows us to focus on His presence and His promises instead. True faith is not simply about believing that God can act. It is about knowing deep in our hearts that He will act in His perfect timing. It means trusting in His goodness, even when the road gets rough, and leaning into His strength when we feel weak. Faith does not guarantee an easy path, but it assures us of His presence, His provision, and His power to overcome. In essence, faith is the weapon that helps us rise above our fears, our doubts, and our despair. It keeps us grounded when the world is shaking beneath us, and it propels us forward when the journey ahead seems impossible. It reminds us that no matter the circumstances, we are not alone, and God's plan will always prevail. So, as we face the challenges of life, let us remember that faith is our weapon, and with it we can conquer anything that stands in our way. The weapon of prayer is one of the most powerful tools we have been given in our spiritual arsenal. It is not a passive or reactive act. It is a dynamic, transformative force. Prayer is not simply a last resort, something we turn to only when we are desperate or out of options. No, prayer is the direct line to the Creator, the means by which we communicate with God, draw near to His presence, and invite His power into our lives. It is a constant, daily access to the Almighty, who hears our cries, our hopes, our fears, and our desires. Prayer is the invitation to God's presence. Through prayer, we are calling upon the Creator of the universe to step into our lives, our situations, and our hearts. We acknowledge that, on our own, we are limited, but when we invite God in, the possibilities become endless. Prayer is the means by which we submit ourselves to God's will and acknowledge that His wisdom and guidance far exceed our own understanding. It is a humble recognition that we do not have all the answers, but that God does, and through prayer we open ourselves to receive those answers. When we pray, we are not simply asking God for things, though He invites us to bring our needs before Him. We are not just reciting words in the hopes that they will somehow be heard. Prayer is an act of relationship, an ongoing conversation with God. It's about aligning our hearts with His, submitting our desires to His greater plan, and seeking His guidance in every aspect of our lives. Prayer is a channel through which God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. It's through prayer that we invite His transformation into our hearts and circumstances. But prayer is not just about inviting God into our lives, it's also about inviting God's strength into our weaknesses. Each of us faces challenges that are beyond our ability to handle on our own. There are moments when life feels overwhelming, when the weight of our circumstances seems too much to bear, and we feel like giving up. But through prayer, we tap into the strength of God. The Bible tells us that when we are weak, He is strong. 2 Corinthians 12:9. When we pray, we allow God to impart His strength to us, enabling us to stand firm in the face of adversity and to overcome the challenges that seem insurmountable. There is power in prayer to transform our hearts. When we pray, we not only ask for God to change our circumstances, but also for Him to change us. Through prayer, we are shaped and molded into the people God intends for us to be. Our hearts are softened, our minds are renewed, and our spirits are strengthened. It's through prayer that we can find the peace that passes all understanding, the kind of peace that guards our hearts and minds in the midst of the most difficult storms. Prayer brings us into God's presence, where fear, anxiety, and worry cannot dwell. and we are filled with His peace. In a world filled with noise, distractions, and chaos, prayer provides the space for us to quiet our souls and tune into God's voice. It's in the stillness of prayer that we hear His guidance, receive His comfort, and find His direction. Prayer allows us to hear the heart of God, not just for our lives, but for the world around us. It gives us the clarity we need to move forward with purpose, to act in alignment with God's will, and to be vessels of His love and grace to others. Through prayer, we align our hearts with God's heart. We acknowledge that He is sovereign, that He is good, and that His plans for us are greater than we can imagine. When we pray, we are saying, God, I trust You. I trust Your timing. I trust Your plan, even when I don't understand it. And as we continue to pray, we begin to see the world differently. We begin to see others through God's eyes, and we begin to see our own lives as part of His grand purpose. Prayer is transformative. It changes our hearts, our attitudes, and our actions. It invites God's power into our lives and into the situations that seem impossible. Prayer is not just a tool for asking, it is a means of accessing the very power of God and allowing that power to flow through us. It is the ultimate weapon in our spiritual battle, the weapon that gives us the strength to stand firm, the clarity to make wise decisions, and the peace to navigate through life's storms. So, let us never underestimate the power of prayer. Let it be our first response, not our last resort. Let it be the means by which we invite God's strength, peace, and transformation into our lives, because when we pray, we are partnering with the Creator of the universe, and there is no power greater than that. The weapon of love is, without a doubt, the most powerful force we possess. In a world that is often marred by division, hatred, and fear, love stands as a beacon of hope, the ultimate catalyst for change. But love is not just a fleeting emotion or a sentimental ideal. It is a dynamic, transformative force with the power to break down barriers, heal wounds, and unify people in ways nothing else can. Love, when genuinely put into action, is a weapon so mighty that no challenge, no hate, no division can stand against it. Love goes far beyond mere words. We live in a world where words are often cheap, thrown around without depth or meaning. But true love is not something that is merely spoken. It is something that is acted upon. Love is shown through our actions, in how we treat others, in how we forgive, in how we offer grace to those who don't deserve it. Love is a verb, not just a noun. It's something we do, not just something we say. It is in the moments of sacrifice, the gestures of kindness, the willingness to lay down our own desires for the sake of others, that love reveals its true power. This love is radical. It defies the norms of the world. It calls us to love not only our friends and those who love us in return, but to love our enemies, those who have wronged us, and those who we might find difficult to love. Jesus himself demonstrated this radical love by reaching out to the marginalized, the outcasts, and even his persecutors. His love did not discriminate based on race, status, or sin. Love in its purest form is unconditional. The power of love is transformative. Love changes everything it touches. It changes hearts. It softens hardened spirits. It lifts up the broken and the hopeless. When love enters a situation, it brings healing, and it restores what was once fractured. It brings peace where there was chaos, understanding where there was division, and unity where there was conflict. This kind of love has the power to mend relationships, rebuild trust, and erase the deep scars of the past. No wound is too deep, no hurt too old, for the healing power of love to reach. Perhaps one of the most profound aspects of love is its ability to unify people. We live in a world filled with differences, cultural, racial, political, ideological, and these differences often divide us. But love transcends these differences. It unites people in a way nothing else can. When we choose to love others, regardless of our differences, we are participating in something greater than ourselves. We are aligning ourselves with God's heart for humanity, a heart that longs for reconciliation and unity. True love brings people together, not just in superficial harmony, but in deep, lasting connection. It breaks down the walls of division and creates a bond that cannot be broken. The weapon of love is not just about individual acts of kindness, though they are important. It is about cultivating a lifestyle of love, a way of being that reflects the heart of God. This love is not contingent on the other person's worthiness or our circumstances. We don't love only when it's easy or convenient, but we choose to love even when it requires sacrifice, when it requires us to go out of our way, when it costs us something. This love is selfless, putting the needs of others before our own, extending grace even when it isn't earned, and forgiving even when forgiveness feels impossible. This radical love is not natural for us. It is supernatural. It comes from God Himself, who loved us even when we were unlovable. He loved us in our brokenness, in our rebellion, and in our sin. God's love is the source from which we draw our ability to love others, and as we embrace this love, we become instruments of change in the world. When we love radically, we change the hearts of those around us. We break the cycles of hatred and hurt. We bring healing where there has been pain, and we open the doors for others to experience the transformative power of God's love. Love, as a weapon, does not fight with force or violence, but with grace, kindness, and compassion. It confronts hate with forgiveness, pain with healing, and division with unity. The impact of this weapon is immeasurable. It doesn't just change one heart, but it has the power to change entire communities, nations, and even the world. This weapon of love is yours to wield. It may seem small in comparison to the weapons of the world, but it is more powerful than we can ever imagine. Love is the weapon that conquers all. When we choose to love, we choose to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, who showed us the greatest act of love the world has ever known. And in doing so, we become vessels of transformation, healers in a hurting world, and agents of reconciliation in a fractured world. So, will you wield the weapon of love? Will you allow its transformative power to flow through you and change the world around you? The world desperately needs this love. Let us be the ones to carry it, to offer it freely, and to watch as it heals, unites, and changes everything. Using the weapon for others is a powerful reminder that the weapons God has given us, faith, prayer, and love, are not meant solely for our personal battles or struggles. While these weapons certainly empower and strengthen us individually, their true purpose is to be shared, extended beyond ourselves, and used to bring change to the lives of others. In a world filled with pain, brokenness, and uncertainty, we have been equipped with the divine tools necessary to make a lasting impact, not just on our own hearts, but on the hearts of others. When we use faith for others, we move beyond the limitations of our own circumstances and become vessels of hope to those who are in despair. Faith has the power to inspire, to lift others up when they cannot stand on their own. Just as we are strengthened by our faith in God, we can strengthen others by speaking life into their situations, by believing for them when they can't believe for themselves, and by showing them that with God, all things are possible. Faith doesn't just change us, it can change the trajectory of someone else's life. When we pray in faith for others, we bring heaven's perspective into their lives, inviting God's power into their situations. Faith is contagious, and when we walk alongside others in faith, we inspire them to trust God in ways they never thought possible. Prayer is another weapon we are meant to use. not just for our own battles, but for the benefit of others. Prayer is the most intimate and powerful way we can intercede for those around us, bringing their needs, struggles, and hurts before the throne of God. When we pray for others, we invite God's intervention into their lives. We are standing in the gap for them, asking God to bring healing to their wounds, peace to their hearts, and wisdom to their decisions. Our prayers have the power to break chains, to lift burdens, and to bring God's presence into places of darkness. We may not always see the immediate results, but we can trust that God hears every prayer, and in His perfect timing, He will respond. Prayer is not just about asking for help. It is about engaging in God's work on behalf of others. It is our way of partnering with Him to bring about the transformation that only He can bring. Love is the greatest weapon we can wield in the lives of others. It is the most powerful force for change in the world, because love transcends everything. It doesn't matter what a person has done or where they have been. Love has the power to break through every barrier. Love is not just a feeling, it's a choice. When we choose to love others, we are making a deliberate decision to put their needs above our own, to see them through God's eyes, and to extend His grace and mercy to them. Love has the power to heal broken hearts, to reconcile relationships, and to bring light into the darkest places. In a world that is often quick to judge, condemn, and divide, we have the opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus, offering love even when it is difficult or undeserved. It is through love that we can reach those who feel forgotten, abandoned, or unloved, offering them the healing power of God's love. As we use faith, prayer, and love for others, we become instruments of change in their lives. We become the ones who stand in the gap for them, who encourage them to keep going when they want to give up, who bring them before God in prayer, and who show them the tangible, transformative love of Jesus. Our actions have the potential to change the course of someone's life, to give them the hope they need to face another day, and to lead them into a deeper understanding of God's power to heal and restore. This weapon is not just for us to hold tightly and use for our own benefit, but for us to give away generously. When we share the weapons of faith, prayer, and love with others, we not only bless them, but we also participate in something much greater than ourselves. We become co-laborers with God, partners in His mission to bring hope and healing to the world. We are the vessels through which His transformative power flows into the lives of others. In sharing our faith, prayer, and love, we are extending the hand of God to those who need it most. We are demonstrating His character and His heart. This is what it means to be His hands and feet in the world. When we use these weapons for others, we participate in bringing heaven to earth, one life at a time. And just as these weapons have changed our lives, they have the potential to change the lives of those around us. So let us take this charge seriously. Let us not keep these weapons to ourselves, but share them generously with others. Let us wield them with boldness, knowing that by using faith, prayer, and love, we become agents of transformation, healing, and hope. The world is waiting for us to rise up and use these weapons to make a difference. The time to act is now. The call to action is a resounding and urgent invitation from God, a call that is not for tomorrow, but for now. The world is not waiting for us to be ready. The world is waiting for us to step into action. The time is not coming, it is here. This is the moment to embrace the power that God has given us and to rise up with boldness, not tomorrow, but tonight. Tonight is the time to act, to wield the weapons of faith, prayer, and love with courage and conviction, and to be the change that God has called us to be in this broken world. God has entrusted us with incredible power, the power to transform lives, to bring hope, to heal the wounded, and to break the chains of oppression. These weapons, faith, prayer, and love, are not tools to be kept in our pockets, waiting for a more convenient time. The world around us is desperate for this power. The world is crying out for people who will stand up and make a difference, who will not wait for a perfect moment, but will seize the moment and act with urgency. The time is tonight. The clock is ticking, and we cannot afford to wait any longer. Every moment that passes is another moment we could have used to bring light into darkness, to bring peace into chaos, and to bring healing into pain. The people around us, our families, our friends, our neighbors, our co-workers, and even strangers, are desperately in need of the weapons God has entrusted to us. There are those who are lost, broken, and searching for hope, and we hold the answer. We cannot afford to hesitate, to hold back, or to wait for the right time. The right time is now. This is a call to rise up. It is a call to embrace the boldness and the confidence that comes from knowing that the Creator of the universe is backing us, empowering us, and working through us. This is the time to believe in the power of faith, to pray with urgency, and to love radically. It's time to stop seeing these weapons as theoretical concepts and to start living them out with action. The world will not be changed by our good intentions or our silent prayers. It will be changed by our active obedience to God's call. God has a purpose for each of us. There is a divine assignment placed on our lives, and it is not for a distant future. It is for today. We are called to wield these weapons now, not as passive bystanders, but as warriors of faith. We are to go into the world with boldness, to bring change wherever we go, to bring God's truth into every conversation, and to reflect His love in every action. The world is waiting for us to step into our purpose, to stop hiding behind fear, insecurity, or hesitation, and to stand firm in the power that God has placed within us. When we rise up, we do not rise in our own strength, but in the strength of the one who has already won the victory. God has already given us the victory over fear, over sin, and over the darkness of this world. We are not fighting for victory. We are fighting from a place of victory. This means we can wield these weapons with confidence and boldness, knowing that God is with us and that His plans for us are good. Tonight is the time to make a decision, to stop waiting for the perfect moment or the right circumstances, and to step out in faith, prayer, and love. It's the time to boldly proclaim the truth of who God is and what He has done for us. It's the time to reach out with love, to offer prayer for those in need, and to encourage others with the faith that God is still at work in the world. The time for action is now. We are the ones who have been entrusted with these weapons, and it is up to us to use them. The world is waiting for us. The broken, the hurting, the lost, they are waiting for us to act, to bring God's transformative power into their lives. Let us not wait another moment. Let us rise up and wield the weapons of faith, prayer, and love with boldness and purpose. Let us bring change to the world, not by our strength, but by His. The world is waiting. The time is now. God is calling us to action. Will we answer the call? Will we rise up and wield the weapons He has given us for His glory and the good of the world? The world is waiting for us to step into our purpose, and there is no better time than tonight. The time is now. Let us go.